Alright, hello and welcome to my dissertation on sexuality in Teen Wolf. So, Teen Wolf, as a show, is a common, 2010s supernatural werewolf show, as was common in our yesteryear. But something interesting about Teen Wolf is that this show was created by this man. I know you can't see him very well, but this is producer Jeff Davis. Now, Jeff Davis is interesting because he is an openly gay man. And in creating his show, Teen Wolf, he decided that homosexuality would be treated as heterosexuality, where homophobia does not exist in the canon world of Teen Wolf. So, you may think that this was beautifully executed and had no problems whatsoever. But that is unfortunately not the case. And while it isn't as bad as some other shows that exist, such as The Vampire Diaries, where they have basically no gay characters and the ones they do have died right away, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So, the first problem we're going to talk about is the unequal balance of gay male characters and relationships and lesbian characters and relationships. So let's go over to this side of my beautiful wall. So our first relationships, some of the biggest ones in the show, are let me get more tape. They are this top one up here, which is our characters Ethan and Jackson, who Jackson represented down here also, and Ethan, this character right here. I'm sorry you can't see anything. Maybe I'll pop the pictures up on the screen. So, those are some of our established gay characters, and then Ethan goes on to date, or previously dated, Danny, also, featured over here. And then we also have a relationship later in the season, which is Mason and Corey, featured down here on our wall. Corey and Mason. But then, our one and only canonical lesbian couple in Teen Wolf are them, Emily and Caitlin. So, as you can see here, it is a 3-to-1 of gay male relationships to lesbian relationships. Now, obviously, the gay male relationships, they feature the same character, but it is still a great divide. So, I had a theory that this uneven relationship pie chart was a direct result of Jeff Davis being a gay man. He, subconsciously or not, wanted to create more representation for himself, which means gay men, instead of focusing on maybe broader spectrums featuring lesbians. And another interesting note is that the actors for Jackson, Ethan, and Danny are all openly gay in our world, real life, which might also have played a role in this. Now, I'm not sure if this was known when they were casted, or if it came up somehow, or if that was very intentionally written into the scripts of their characters. We don't know. Or maybe we know, but I didn't look into it. So that is my first theory on why there is such a divide here. Now, one of my questions is this good representation for the LGBTQ community? I'm not sure. So, like I said, it's good that they exist in this show. It's a very interesting idea that homophobia doesn't exist in this universe, and that all relationships are treated equally. However, primarily featuring gay men is a bit of a pervasive problem in media. For some reason, everyone likes to gravitate towards gay men instead of lesbian relationships. This is starting to change, of course, but I still see some problems. And another thing to note is that technically they're a little diverse, but there is only one very openly POC character out of these lovely people. Danny's actor, I believe, is also POC, but he is white-skinned, so we will count him with the other gay white men up here, which is also a pervasive topic in the LGBTQ community, where primarily white gay men are represented as, you know, the gay community, which is not the case. So that is another issue. Now, this kind of goes back to Jeff Davis being a gay man. I was maybe wondering if women just kind of slipped out of his attention when making the relationships for this show. But we will see that that is not entirely the case, as we have lots of lovely female characters that are well developed and could have been the focus of maybe more diverse relationships. Now, going back to no homophobia canonically in the Teen Wolf universe. So, in the early seasons, before the show got a little more serious, I thought that some good representation that came from this was the very casual way that homosexuality was joked about. Now, I know this may sound bad, but when I'm saying, like, joked about, one of our characters here, Styles, I don't know if you can see him, but he's down here. He makes a lot of jokes around with Danny. And he says things like, tell me I'm attracted to gay people. Tell me I'm attracted to gay men. Am I attracted to gay men? And, like, while these jokes may seem a little insensitive, in the show they're played completely seriously and not used in any way to mock gay characters, which is, I thought, was really interesting when I first watched the show. So we have that, and also casual representation of drag queens and gay clubs, which I thought was really nice. It didn't feature gayness as something, like, to be special or something that we needed special focus. It was just part of the world, which I appreciated. However, it's time to move on to a slightly funnier and very bizarre occurrence in Teen Wolf. And this is people only being bisexual in the clubs. When I first watched Teen Wolf, I really didn't notice this at all. Like, I noticed them in the scene, but I really didn't piece it together until my second watch with a friend. We were watching these scenes, and every time a club scene popped up, we noticed that someone became bisexual. And it's not that all of the characters weren't bisexual outside the club, it's just that it was never mentioned outside of the club, which I found ridiculous. So, our first example comes from Season 2, I believe. It features one gay character who some people in the fandom believe to label him bisexual, which is open to debate. I personally believe he's gay. We might get back into that later. And then there is also our characters Erica and Isaac. Now, outside of the club, Erica and Isaac are in, well, get into straight relationships. They're single in the scene. But in a plan to inject Jackson with something, he was being evil, so we needed to get up close and inject him with something. We're in the club, and then they all start dancing together, meaning Isaac, Erica, and Jackson. And this very much could have been, well, it is, an overtly, sexual scene meant for the audience. However, there are noticeable moments of tension between Jackson and Isaac. And also Erica. Because she's great. I love Erica. But I thought this was fascinating because after this scene, and before, Erica and Isaac show no preference towards the same sex. So, as I like to say, they became bisexual in the club. Interesting, right? And then, another example. I have 4 examples. It's really funny. So, in this scene, one of the lovely women from the lesbian couple is bisexual. And in this scene, they're at a club, and she is talking to our character, Styles. And in this scene, he says to her, I'm sorry about your loss because, now, I guess this is a good time to bring it up, our character from this lovely gay relationship died. She's dead. Yeah, the other lesbian in this singular lesbian relationship died. So now we only have 1 bisexual and 0 lesbians, which is a whole can of worms, really. But in this scene, Styles is, saying his condolences, saying, I hope you're, doing well after that whole tragic event of our only lesbian character getting ripped apart in the woods by a werewolf. And in this scene, she's trying to forget this whole traumatic event and stuff. So she, is kissing men, kissing women, having fun in the club. Good for her. But Styles is like, aren't you a lesbian? Don't you like women? And she says, I like guys too. And then she says to Styles, do you? As in referencing, does he like men? Also. And he makes a face, not a bad face, but a face of consideration. And me and my friend, during our second watch through, we took this as him realizing that he might be bisexual. But is it brought up again? Not really. Aside from his gay jokes. But as the comedic character, I figured those really weren't meant to be taken seriously. At least that's how I felt about it. I don't know how other people in the community feel. But then we have another one. Fascinating, I know. Oh. Okay, hold on. I figured this might happen. Another one. They go to Mexico, and they're staking out a club. And in doing so, they have to pretend like they're not staking out the club, obviously. So, 2 of our lovely female characters, which are Malia and Kira, they, Kira's a little awkward in the club. She doesn't really know how to dance very well. So Malia kind of gets real close to her and starts dancing with her. Fun in the club. But it is shot and portrayed as though it might be a realization of sorts, a little bit, which is the only time these 2 characters have expressed any attraction to the opposite sex. And never happens again, outside of this singular moment. Which does not bode well for our representation of lesbians. Unfortunate, I know. And then, our final moment, Brett in the club. So Brett is a explicitly bisexual character. He states it in this scene in this club. But it's never brought up again or matters at all outside of this singular moment where he dances with a guy and a girl. I don't know what this means, but I know it's weird. Jeff, explain this to me, Jeff. Why are there only bisexual people in the clubs? Explain that one to me. So, let's go back into styles. So, styles, like I said, is never explicitly stated to be, well, anything really, bi, gay, straight. We don't know. Now, a lot of people, many people, take this club scene to mean that he is bisexual. But, of course, never been stated, so we don't know. But why would Jeff Davis choose to add this scene into the show? That's the real question. What purpose is there for this scene of this wonderful woman introducing the concept of bisexuality to Styles, if not to hint that his character may or may not be bisexual? Now, it could all be to satisfy some of the shippers, who we will get to later. So it might be a little nod to the audience saying, hey, your favorite ship could be possible, because in this universe, homophobia doesn't exist. It could be that. But outside of this moment, and actually all of these moments, they do not have any effect on the show whatsoever, other than acknowledging bisexualness, but only in the club. Now, that is my favorite takeaway from Teen Wolf. I don't know how or why I noticed this, but it is my favorite thing to reflect back on. Okay, so now we will get into another fun topic, which is shipping. And in this case, differences between the popularity of male ships, male, homosexual ships, and straight ships, and also the lack of lesbian ships, which honestly is a problem in many communities. Like, honestly, if you look across a lot of communities with major ships, not a lot of them are going to be lesbian ships, which I think speaks for a problem of representation as a whole, but let's get into it for Teen Wolf. So, our first major ship of the show is straight. It is Scott and Allison. Now, Scott and Allison have the privilege of being one of the most popular straight ships in the show, which I found really interesting because, to me, they're a little boring. And honestly, they didn't last long in the show either, so I'm confused. But let me try and explain why I think this ship has remained popular after all this time, even though there is a better straight ship, if I may say. So, Scott and Allison are our first straight couple of the show. The first episode starts and ends with them getting together. They meet for the first time, they realize they like each other, and then they start dating from that first episode, which I found really impressive. Honestly, for a teen show, getting the two main characters to get together in, like, the first episode is very impressive. So that's part of the reason why I do enjoy this show. So they have this whole first love, perfect together, they're just so happy. But then, a couple mishaps, they break up a time. Actually, they only break up one time and they never get back together, which is fascinating. So they break up, and then they have this pining. Should we get back together? Our families are, or her family is keeping them apart. All that drama wrapped up in there, but they never end up getting back together. In fact, Allison ends up dating Isaac from the club. But, this is his straight relationship, so it's all well and good. Really boring, actually. I don't think the showrunners knew what to do with these characters, so they put them together. But that's a personal opinion. So, in any case, they have remained so popular, I think, because of this devoted first love situation they have going on. And they have a lot of forces keeping them apart, but they still... Well, they don't really end up together in the end because Allison dies, but... Sorry for the spoilers, but that's what happens. So, it ends as a continuous pining for the first love situation, which is interesting. And I do like it, but the characters are boring, so whatever. But then on to my favorite straight ship of the show, which is Styles and Lydia. Now, this should, by all rights, be one of the most popular ships in the show. It is very well developed. We have a pining situation going on from Styles. He's had a crush on Lydia forever, and throughout the show, she builds up seeing his intelligence and seeing his actions, and him learning more about her as she comes into her... well, she's a banshee, so learning about her powers and all of that, and surviving all of the nonsense of the show together, and, really growing together and becoming a strong couple. But guess what the show never does? Have them end up together. Now, I think at the end of the show, they kind of end up dating. It's a situation, but then in the movie, which we do not talk about, never talk to me about the movie, they are not together, and they have gone their separate ways since they left the town. Which is unfortunate, because they could have been one of the best couples in the show if they let us have the satisfying resolution and not just break them apart immediately. And then, for our last common straight couple, we have Liam and Hayden. So, Liam and Hayden, they are a mirror to Scott and Allison from the first season. We're all the way in the fourth season now, so they are the prodigies of sorts. They start out as I wouldn't even say love-hate. She really doesn't like him. Incident back in the day, she doesn't like him. But as they go through the trauma of what is happening in the show at this point, which is crazy, they bond, grow together. She realizes that he's changed, that she doesn't have to hold on to these past grudges from when they were kids, and they develop into this very, really strong, encouraging relationship where they both, are very spirited people. So it's very nice. So those are some of our main straight male-female ships. But the most popular ships on the show are, of course, our fan male-male ships, which is, these relationships are not canon, but they are very heavily written about, talked about, all of those good things. So, I guess I'll start with Liam's big gay ship, and that is Liam and Theo. I still don't know if you can see these pictures, but Liam and Theo are over here, and tumultuous history with Theo. He was evil all of season 5, really just sucked, really bad. But then he came back from hell in season 6. It's a whole thing. So he comes back from hell, he's a little freaked out because hell isn't quite nice. And Liam promises Scott that he would make sure Theo stayed out of trouble, didn't try and kill everyone again. which is all nice and stuff, you know? So Theo's back. He's still a little evil, because, you know, hell doesn't change you right away. So it's Liam looking after Theo, Theo trying to plot and be evil and stuff. But, you know, a little bit, he's trying to help out. There's another situation going on, so he can't quite, you know, take over the whole pack again like he tried to. But throughout the events of season 6, they grow this really interesting, trusting relationship between each other and have become one of the most popular ships in the show, which I think is really fascinating because I hated Theo season 5, but his redemption arc in season 6 really was helped by Liam. So I think this is really good. It shows how they grew to trust each other again after Theo used Liam to try and kill Scott and almost succeeded. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But in the end, they're able to trust each other enough to let them, you know, hold off the evils and, like, work together to defeat other evils that there are. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then on to the most popular ship in the show. And that is Stiles and Derek. So, this ship is incredibly popular. And I personally don't understand why. I don't think it's as good as Stiles and Lydia, but that's a controversial opinion. So, I think why Stiles and Derek are so popular as a couple is because of Stiles's sarcastic, witty humor, and Derek's stoicness. So Derek as a character, he's basically Batman, which is ironic because his actor plays Superman, but whatever. So he's basically Batman. He's all broody, he lost his family in a fire, trying to build his pack, but failing miserably. He sucks at that. And then Stiles, you know, Derek's a werewolf, too. An alpha werewolf. So he's, like, super powerful, super big. And then Stiles, he's just a sarcastic human. He has no powers, he doesn't get any powers, which is commendable. So, I feel like people are drawn to this stoic man versus sarcastic, witty man thing. And they have a lot of comedic moments together in the show. I think Jeff definitely saw all the fan stuff and maybe manufactured some moments to support. Which, you know, good for you, Jeff. Whatever floats your boat. Doesn't float mine, but whatever. So, it's this dynamic, you know, it's fun. But why is this, or why are these gay ships so much more popular than our straight ships? Which is an interesting question. I'm not posing that one is better than the other. I'm just saying, and in fandom in general, honestly, gay ships are way more prevalent and supported than straight ships. And I have some theories. I think that this is because of how female characters are written. Now, I love the female characters of Teen Wolf. It's just that sometimes their friendships with male characters get a little not as developed as some of our male-male friendships, which develop into ships. It's that a lot of the times they don't learn and grow together, they just develop a relationship. Which is why I think that Stiles and Lydia are such a good couple, because throughout the entire 6-season show, they've developed this relationship, which I think could have made one of the best couples in the show, but apparently not. Jeff didn't want to. Probably because of this ship right here. Now, the same could be said for Liam and Hayden. However, Hayden was only around for I believe, a season and a half or something. Maybe just one season. So while they did grow together and they learned to like each other, they didn't really grow as characters together before she left the show. However, these two popular ships, they had, well, these two only had 2 seasons, which is why it's so miraculous. That season 6 redemption arc really did a lot for him. But this one has had many moments throughout the entire 6-season run of the show. So I think it's just maybe a failure of Jeff to stick with 2 characters and have them really develop intentionally. But I get this is just a 2010s TV show, so it can't be perfect. And, you know, I still think that the fandom really appreciates all of the relationships, except for some. 'Cause some of them are ridiculous. But there are also some debates in the fandom, this is a little unrelated, which come from Derek's age. So, when we start the show, we're told that Derek is only a few years older than Stiles and Scott, which is fine, which totally goes well with the shipping dynamics or the friendship dynamics or whatever. It explains why he's hanging around to school still, because he's not 25. However, we'll come back to that. However, he is later retconned because of some other terrible things Jeff did to him to be around 25. So now when people hear about this ship, they assume that it's some random 17-year-old with some random 25-year-old and get a little weirded out. So I think that one's Jeff's fault. Sorry if you can hear my cat. She's upset. So I feel like in an effort to retcon, maybe he was even trying to avoid this ship altogether when you first saw it pop up. But Jeff, retconned Derek's age to be around 25, which honestly matches the actor's age better. However, it messes up some things along the line. Now, he was also trying to retcon this to fix that other horrible thing he did to Derek, which him being 25 would have made that terrible thing better, which is questionable in and of itself, but this is not the video for that. So, I think in Teen Wolf and in other TV shows in the same genre, I think that the real reason why gay ships are so much more popular is because of the underdevelopment of straight ships, which, of course, isn't to say anything against gay ships, obviously. Like, they're all cute, really. But it is, I think, maybe stemming back to the misogyny and the lack of lesbian characters, and also killing one of one. She's the only lesbian, as she is bisexual. So I think it all kind of ties together in this neat little bow of, I think maybe Jeff has something against women. Now, I am joking, but I feel like the evidence speaks for itself. There's something going on here. Now, that was all I really wanted to talk about. These are my points for, well, this is my evidence for sexuality in Teen Wolf. These are my thoughts, as we all know. But there's one more thing I wanted to add on. Now, in addition to killing off our only lesbian character, he also killed Brett. I know. He killed Brett, too. Now, this isn't as egregious, because there are many other gay and bisexual characters on this wall. However, I have a personal bone to pick with him for killing Brett. And that was that it was completely unnecessary. Brett's been a character for 2.5 seasons. Existed perfectly fine. Not super important, not super not important. But tell me why Jeff dedicates a whole episode to hunters hunting him down. He's a werewolf. To hunters hunting him down. And him and his sister getting run over by a car in the end. What is that? It was just mean. So, it's not connected to him being bi at all, but I just want justice for my boy. So, this will be the end of my presentation on sexuality in Teen Wolf. Very interesting, right? Like, for a show that is supposedly set in a universe where homophobia does not exist, which I believe is true. None of the characters act homophobic. Well, of course, the environment that they're in, that being a 2010s, MTV TV show, maybe lends some moments more homophobic. Maybe Jeff couldn't do all that he wanted to do for progression of gay rights, or what his goals were for doing all of this, intentionally or unintentionally. But interesting or not, this was how sexuality was treated in Teen Wolf. So I still do recommend watching this show. I love it. I love all these characters. Even though we only see our lesbians, well, in one or two scenes, I guess. Caitlin, poor girl, dies in the scene she's introduced in. It's not a good look. But, in any case, I do recommend watching it. It is a very fun, kind of turn your brain off show. So, give it a watch, see if you notice my favorite part, bisexuality in the clubs. And, just have a good time, but keep in mind that Jeff Davis has an agenda. Not quite sure what it is still, but he has it. Thank you.